Pastor Mike, good afternoon at 7 minutes past 12, live on Mannin Line today with representatives of the Manx Wildlife Trust, which has been around for, well, over 50-odd years now. It's the leading nature conservation charity. Members, staff and volunteers support Manx Wildlife Trust to protect what's around us, Manx wildlife. So in the next hour, your chance to have a chat to Leigh Morris and Lucy Chapman, and we'll find out what state our Manx wildlife is in. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What's the most important thing on the Isle of Man? And possibly what is most at danger? Leigh and Lucy, hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good to see you. So Leigh, so tell us now, what state are we in? Because we hear lots of stories about things getting worse in the world in terms of climate change, in terms of the environment. How is the Isle of Man doing? Are we getting better or worse?
I think the first thing I'd say is that the Isle of Man's a wonderful place for nature. That's why we love our job, and that's why I'm delighted to have moved here 4 years ago. It's a wonderful place for nature. It's not perfect. And in our role as Manx Wildlife Trust, we want to conserve the great stuff that we've got. We want to try and bring some things back that are no longer here and enhance nature. And we've got some pluses and some minuses. One thing we are really keen to do, and we're going to do that in the next few months, is come out with a document that we've worked well with the government and lots of other environmental charities on the island, what we're calling a state of nature. And that's a term that's used across, it's used in other countries. And we're going to come out with what we think is a baseline of nature, and there'll be some things that we don't know. But I'll give you one success. Look at Manx shearwaters. Years ago they'd gone. We and others, partners, worked together. We've pretty much eradicated the long tails on the calf of man, and we've now got over 1,000 breeding pairs coming back. But to flip that, another really important bird for us are tree sparrows. We thought they were almost on the brink. They are on the brink, but we're working now with others, with Manx BirdLife, with the Manx Ornithological Society, to try and conserve those tree sparrows. And we're doing all we can to do that. So there's pluses and minuses, and we're going to get a baseline.
Lucy, you're a Team Wilder coordinator, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
What does that mean? What is it?
The project Team Wilder is about connecting people with nature and inspiring them to do what they can in their own lives to help wildlife. So the science says if you can get 1 in 4 people to take up any cause, then that's enough to create a tipping point that means that change will happen really fast. And across the whole Wildlife Trust Federation, we want that cause to be wildlife.
Okay, now, where do the volunteers fit into this, and how does anybody volunteer for Manx Wildlife Trust?
So volunteers are a hugely important part of what we do. We've got around 300 volunteers now, and there's lots of different ways that we can work with them to get involved. So we've got a regular team who go out the midweek muckers and the Ballacurry bashers who help on specific nature reserves, managing them for wildlife.
The Ballacurry bashers?
The Ballacurry bashers who look after the Ballacurry Nature Reserve.
Right.
Down in the south of the island, and then we've got the midweek muckers who move around our nature reserves doing those really labour intensive jobs that are done sensitively so as not to disturb wildlife, to manage the nature reserve. So they're our practical volunteers. We've got volunteers down at Craigie Cowan, which is our new Celtic Rainforest project, who working alongside the Isle of Man Woodland Trust. We're going to be planting 35,000 trees down there. So there's lots to do. There's lots to get involved with. But we've got people helping with our education. We've got people helping in the office. But part of Team Wilder is also a new way of working where we're supporting people to work more independently. So they might get their own community project up and running that can benefit nature, or maybe it's even just something that they're doing in their own garden.
Stop right there. Rainforest project.
Rainforest project
on the Isle of Man.
On the Isle of Man. So temperate rainforest is a landscape, a habitat that would have been present many years ago across down the west coast of the British Isles, and there's a big partnership with Aviva. They've given a big donation as part of their environmental social governance to start to restore and create some of this temperate rainforest, so much of which we've lost across the west coast of the British Isles. And the Isle of Man and Manx Wildlife Trust were one of the first places to acquire some land to start doing that. So it's a project that's really captured the interest and imagination of the Manx public. They've been very supportive of it.
Where's it starting?
At Craigie Cowan, so that's in East Baldwin.
Right. Leigh Morris, we hear a lot about ash dieback and trees dying on the Isle of Man. Where does Manx Wildlife fit into that? Do you monitor that? Do you help with that? What happens?
We're not doing well. We have a project actually directly with ash, but I guess the broader term is that sometimes you get pests and diseases will come in, and the ecology of an island or a place will change. Yeah. With ash dieback, there's actually some resistance in ash, in Fraxinus. So we've actually got.
There was no stopping it.
There is some resistance, and actually, there's in one of our projects in Ramsey at the Hairpin Woodland Park. There's an area there of a field where there's a lot of ash seedlings, and if you walk through there, you'll see that some of them are sustaining; they're alive. So we're looking to partner a local nursery, and actually we tried it last year. My background's horticulture, so I did a little bit of bench grafting last year, and without going too technical, if you get resistant bits and you graft them onto seedlings lower down, you can sustain. So there's an element of that, but there's also an element of how does the island's tree population evolve, and you know what is a resilient island forest going to look like, and maybe there'll be less ash in future, and maybe there'll be other tree species that will come in and that will look to replace ash with other ones, but hopefully keep some ash.
And what might those species be?
Well, interestingly, one of them is not typically a Manx species. Some will talk about sycamores, so acers. Maybe that's one tree species that comes in. But I want to reassure people that things that are very Manx, the Manx oaks, birch, rowans, those trees will still be very much in the landscape. But who knows what tree disease is round the corner? Okay,
let's go to the lines then. And Julian's first on today. Hi, Julian. You're live with Manx Wildlife Trust.
Hi, Andy, and hello to Leigh and Lucy.
Hi.
Hi. Question for you. Do you have any concerns about wind turbines being deployed on and around the Isle of Man?
So you won't be surprised, Julian, that we thought there might be a question on wind turbines. So do we have concerns? Yes. Are we more enthused at the possibility of renewable energy? Yes. And there is a lot of concern, and we empathise with the concern about wind turbines, both on land and also in the sea. I think we very much understand that people have different opinions about renewable energy, and they would range in extremes from people that think it's an absolute no-brainer and we have to become off-grid as soon as possible. There'll be other people that think there's some scaremongering and is climate change real. Manx Wildlife Trust as a whole organisation, we're very much towards the spectrum that we believe climate change is a major threat for biodiversity, it's a major threat for people, and we need to do something about it as a population. And we should do what we can in our island to make that difference. And so therefore doing something and getting renewable energy high up the agenda is important for us as an organisation. We're therefore very, very, very supportive of the Isle of Man government, who are now pushing a renewables agenda. The but from that is that whatever is done needs to be done in the right place. And we as an organisation, and I'm glad to say this on the radio, we trust and expect our government to carry out full and rigorous ecological appraisals and surveys and a full due diligence on any planning process before any turbines go up in the land or the sea. And that's our position now, and I think that's a really important one, that there are conversations that I have behind the scenes that don't mean that we're not having those conversations. But we need to trust and expect, and I use that word strongly, process to happen properly. And if it doesn't, then we might change our stance. But that's where we are now. We like renewables, we want renewables, but we want them in the right place, and we expect due process to take place before anything's built.
Julian?
Yeah, the 2,000 scientists at clintel.org might not agree with the Wildlife Trust in that case about the fact that they're saying that there is no climate emergency. However, various things. There's a particular document I'd like to ask you about on the Wildlife Trust website. But first of all, you've got recent news with the wind farm in the south of France having to remove the turbines, including the foundations, and returning it to its original condition because of multiple bird strikes and infrasound problems with humans. You've got Leibniz University in Germany saying that 55 bat deaths per year per megawatt, which would mean over 1,000 bat deaths per year on the island. You've got ESI Energy in America recently been fined $8 million for killing raptors across 8 US states. You've also got Derby Haven being cited as a potential place to bring the turbine blades ashore, although that's supposed to be an area of special scientific interest. But on your Wildlife Trust website, you've got several documents, including one called The Way Back to the Living Seas. And it states on page 18, there is no policy to reduce harmful noise and very little evidence to support decision-making in relation to noise impacts, despite documentaries like Thrown to the Wind, which recently showed massive amounts of dead whales on beaches off New York and New Jersey. If your Wild Trust website is currently saying that there is no policy in regarding even just noise from wind turbines, shouldn't there be a moratorium on any development of wind farms until at least there is some policy based on your own document?
I mean, it's a fair question, and I can see that you care passionately about this, and I very much respect and empathise with that. I'm not suggesting that we're perfect and razor sharp on every single policy on our website, but the fundamental principles for us remain that we want, as a principle of renewable energy, we'll have to agree to differ. We think climate change is a big issue. We think it's a big issue for nature, and we think it's a big issue for the planet. And so we could talk for hours, and you won't change my opinion on that. But I respect your different opinion. But for us as an organisation, we've had long discussions both at board level and with the staff team. And for us, renewable energy is a really important thing that we want to go forward. And I think it will tease out. But I would just say to you right now again that there needs to be a process. That process has started. Nothing's happened yet. No one's put a spade in the ground yet. And we need to make sure, and we will make sure as a charity, that we speak up if we think the due process isn't being followed correctly. So I think having people like yourself on the detail is really important. We want to listen to you, and we'd be very glad to get that detail. If we've missed things, throw it into us. But our fundamental base principles remain that there is a climate change. It's not. We don't believe it's wrong. There is a climate change risk. It's impacting on nature. It's impacting on people, and we think renewable energy, appropriate renewable energy in the right place, is a key step forward. And ultimately, when I was born, there were less than 3 billion people on the planet. There's over 8 billion people now, and we need energy to run. And we think it needs to be focused on renewables. I can see Lucy's itching. Go on, Lucy.
I think just to add to that is that we do accept, and I think everybody needs to accept, it is complicated. These issues that we're facing, biodiversity loss, climate change, they are very complicated, very messy. They're sometimes called wicked problems. If there was one simple answer, that would be great, and if we could stand as experts and give that one simple answer, well, we wouldn't be being truthful. We do have to embrace the complexity in the decision making, and we will do our part and use the expertise that I see every day when I go into work to offer our best contribution to this very, very complicated, very messy situation.
So you think this inevitably this will mean a compromise somewhere?
I think that when human activity is involved, there are consequences, and that goes from every morning we wake up in the morning, we get out of bed, and we have an impact on the world that we live in. I don't know many big decisions that don't come with two sides of the coin, and I think to pretend that big decisions can be made without differing impacts is overly simplistic and not helpful to the conversation.
Okay, all right. Julian, good to hear from you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Okay, here's a message from Alex, who just said, can you ask the people from Manx Wildlife Trust what impact the nuclear power stations across the way, the ones at Sellafield and also the ones at Heysham, does that have an effect on the Isle of Man? Because Alex says people often talk about nuclear power being green. Is it very green to the Isle of Man, Leigh Morris?
It's a good question. My wife's from Whitehaven, and she would talk about Sellafield and how she grew up in that shadow. So I'm not claiming to be an expert on nuclear energy. I think I'm told recently that there's an area of water at Sellafield that needs to be drained away, and it's radioactive. I think Lucy had a fantastic point. He says, in that everything we do has an impact. Conservation for me is about people, and we have to live. We live on a planet, and we want to enjoy living on the planet. And so everything we do has an impact, and we need to somehow mitigate that and make sure that we can sustain the wildlife around it. So I'm not an expert on nuclear power. I'm not going to try and give an answer to something. I think we have to. I don't suppose we're going to propose building a nuclear power station here. What happens in Sellafield, does it concern me? Yes, it does. I don't lose sleep over it, but I don't know enough about it.
Okay, all right. It's interesting. I mean, that was a real hot topic years and years ago when people like Bono were getting involved in it. But that's for the future. Let's get more questions coming in. Thanks for those. And Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Good afternoon to your guests.
Hello.
Just a curio. It's information that you may be able to pass on to myself and the general public. I've grown up on the island all my life, born here, and we've always had the assumption that there was no squirrels, snakes, moles, and all this sort of thing. They were not indigenous. But now that we have a shipping company, no matter what it is, and the airlines in and out of here all the time, what is to prevent, is there anything in your knowledge, within legislation, etc., that will prevent people bringing this sort of animal or snake or whatever they call them, mammals, into the island? I know there's one shop here has quite a collection of what we term as exotic animals. And I know it was nice when the first of the wallabies got out and they were plumping all over the Blackfoot and the Currachs, but now I believe they're becoming a bit of a distraction. And what would happen if these animals were brought in and there's no legislation to prevent it, and they became then a pest?
Yes, I think non-native species is a really important topic for us, and also for DEFA Manx government. Invasive non-native species, and around the world there are hundreds of examples of where man has moved things. My own background is plants. People would go on ships around the world, collect plants, take them back to botanic gardens, take them out and they spread and they make an impact. So non-native species is important, be that a plant species or be it something as large as a wallaby. Squirrels, I know there's certainly people in the island who would be keen that the Isle of Man potentially becomes a sanctuary for red squirrels. Our standpoint as a charity is that first and foremost we care about Manx nature, and if there are any Manx species, we don't want them impacted by anything that's not from the island. And clearly things do move. People can bring things in cars, but both for us and the government, we care first and foremost about Manx species.
I think it's also education's really important. So people knowing not to release certain species into the wild. If you've got a terrapin in a tank that you don't want anymore, that doesn't belong in a wetlands. Things that people are flushing down their toilets, planting in their gardens. These can all sort of escape. So I think just education and people taking some responsibility themselves, which again is all part of the Team Wilder project. What impact am I having, and how can I help wildlife? It's all of our responsibility to make sure that the native Manx wildlife is protected.
Howard?
Do you know of any security-wise for people importing animals? Because on the likes of the steam packet, you can come in. I'm only quoting the steam packet because that's the one that's normally used. No deference to them. But you can leave an animal in a car and you don't pay for it, which is fair, or you can take it up into the lounge. But if you don't pay for it, you leave it in the car, it's there for the journey. In a 4-hour journey, you can have importing a serious problem onto the island. Is there any security on these of what comes in?
There's not the same security there would be on other islands I've lived on, where the biosecurity regulations are very, very stringent because they're much more remote islands, and it's deemed that the biodiversity there is very, very different than what might come in. But that's not because people don't care. I think it comes down to maybe a capacity and a money issue. I think if every time you got on one of the boats that go, a few times a day, if there was a stringent biosecurity check on every car and vehicle and bag that went on, I think there'd be a huge backlash against that. So I think there is a compromise. But But certainly, the Wildlife Act and the things, non-native species are not wanted on the island, and we don't want people releasing things, be that, new invert species or large mammals. I think there is a process, and first and foremost, I guess my last point on this would be that I want people to hopefully value what we've got already, and not think, we can, let's let elk loose, or let's bring some red deer in, or maybe we'll let some foxes run around the island. Wouldn't that be nice? We want people to understand that the nature we've got now is really precious. And if you introduce anything into an ecosystem, be that a small bug, a plant, or a large mammal, it will impact on what's already there. And we believe that what we've got here is pretty special, and we want to cherish that and not damage it by bringing things in that are not from the island.
Okay, thanks, Howard.
That's nice to hear, but I would like to hear something more serious from the government and a bit more advertising as what not to do.
Okay, all right, we appreciate that, Howard. I just want to come then, Leigh Morris, to the wallabies. They're facetious. They're very odd. Australian TV crews absolutely love them. They have no natural predator on the Isle of Man apart from the odd Nissan Micra on the road. So, is the wallaby population sustainable, and is it good for the Isle of Man?
I've been here 4 years now, and I was in meetings for quite a few meetings in my first couple of years where the topic of wallabies would come up. And I'd like to say that the wallabies escaped from the wildlife park. There's no debate in that in my mind. That they escaped from the wild park in probably the late 60s, early 70s, and they built up a population. But the wildlife park is right in the heart of our most important conservation designation area. It's a Ramsar site. It's an area of import. It's an ASSI. It's an important internationally regarded wetland site. So let's just get that clear for the whole Manx population. This is our most important conservation site. And when we have conversations about that conservation site, the topic of wallabies would come up. And then I found my experience in the first 2 years was that people got very passionate, often bordering on anger, with very polar views. Some people would say there's only 10 or 20 of them. Why are we even wasting the conversation? Other people would say there's hundreds and they're stopping hen harriers roosting and they're eating all our plants. And we had no baseline. So we're very conscious, again, as a charity that cares about Manx nature, is that we don't want to have arguments with people. We want to have informed, evidence-based discussions. And so we as a charity decided that we wanted to get more evidence. And so last year, about this time last year actually, we had a guy came to the island who specialises in counting large mammals with a drone with a thermal image camera. And he came across and we did the counts, and we did it at night only because the wind in the day when he came was too strong. So I sat with him the first night and we went to the Currachs and he got his drone in the air and we did a count. I was amazed at how many there were. I'm not trying to give dramatic effect. I was genuinely amazed. I was so amazed that I'm going to go back and do the same area again 2 days later.
How did you know there weren't cows or horses?
I could. The film's online. You can see a tail. They look like mini T-Rexes on a thermal image camera. You can see the hares, you can see the sheep. They're slightly less thermal imprint because they're the wool. It's very, very clear. Anyone that wants to see the footage, I'm happy to. We've got lots of footage recorded from the drone. But I watched the methodology for probably 10 or 12 hours over 2 nights, and I'm certain there's nearly 600 just living in the Balaf Currach. Now, that figure alone, we're not coming out with a statement of what that means. But what it does mean that no one can say there's only 10 or 20 anymore. It informs our discussion as an island. Now, maybe they have been here so long, maybe they deserve to be Manxified, but there is a population of 600 wallabies.
And what's the rate of breeding?
We don't know. We also don't know how inbred they are. So last time I was in the Currachs just before...
Very, I would imagine.
Well, I used to work in the zoo world, and when I was at Edinburgh Zoo, I had an office and we had a wallaby walk round outside. So I know how popular it is for people because they go in there, but I also know that if you wanted to breed a red-necked wallaby as a zoo, you had to go through the European Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and you had to speak to the stud book holder who would control the gene pool and which wallabies could cross with which wallabies to ensure that there was no inbreeding. So that's how the zoo world works to make sure that these problems are mitigated against. Now, I don't know with redneck wallabies whether... I can't believe 100 escaped from the wildlife park. So however many escaped have bred as a population. Now, the last time I was in the Currachs, and again I filmed it, there was a wallaby completely blind. It was running around the field, bumping into trees, tripping over itself. Other people find them with... Now, I don't know if that's just what wallabies do, but even if you're the most fervent supporter of wallabies in the Isle of Man and that they're here to stay, surely we don't want them unhealthy. We need to understand this population because it's not half a dozen, it's hundreds. So we as an island, and this is very much our standpoint, we need to understand the wallabies better and make some informed discussions and decisions about what we do next.
Okay, talking about Belaf currachs, and there's a question in from Simon who just said, are the Belaf currachs draining, and is it anything to do with the willows?
There's certainly more willows there than there were before, and willows suck up water. We did a rudimentary, that's probably unfair, we did a one-person hydrology survey of the currachs. We'd like to do more of a hydrological survey. Certainly the willows, the sallies growing up, we believe have impacted on the roosting grounds for the hen harriers. You know, maybe that's the reason they're not there anymore, not the wallabies, or maybe it's a bit of both.
We're live today with Manx Wildlife Trust. Leigh Morris is here. He's Chief Exec of Manx Wildlife Trust, and the Team Wilder coordinators, Lucy Chapman. You want to get in touch? Got lots of questions to get through. If you want to call 66 13 68, text 166 177, WhatsApp same number, or email studio@manxradio.com.
Loganair's big summer sale is here. Save up to 15% off on over 1 million seats across the UK. Book by 9th January, travel from 1st February. Subject to availability, exclusions apply. Visit loganair.co.uk. Loganair, your journey, our joy.
Have you heard the news?
We're number one. We're family run. Mike's Motors. Mike's Motors.
The huge Mike's Motors winter sale is now on, with prices that will warm your heart, a handsome £200 worth of Marks & Spencer's vouchers, and a full tank of fuel with every vehicle sold. Buy now with nothing to pay for 3 months and up to £500 cash back available on all our finance deals. So come on down to Castletown and grab your deal today. T's and C's apply. Mike's Motors is an approved Conister Bank partner.
Do you know, Dave, the Q Plus counter always has just what I need. Whatever plumbing job I'm working on, whether a state-of-the-art bathroom or the latest heating system, Q Plus always help. With extensive supplies, friendly, knowledgeable service and great prices, it really is the one-stop shop for trade and DIY customers alike. And if they don't have what you want in stock, they'll find it for you. See for yourself. Just take a look at Q Plus on Facebook.
The Ramsey Garden Centre seasonal sale is now on, featuring a huge range of seasonal items at up to 50% off. Don't delay, grab a bargain today. There's never been a better time to visit Ramsey Garden Centre. Open 7 days a week on Albert Road, Ramsey.
The Shore Hotel Laxey has an exceptional offer too good for the weekend. Enjoy a night of winter midweek staycation luxury in January or February with breakfast for two and a £40 per person dining voucher for only £260. To book, call us or visit shorehotellaxey.im and experience the exceptional.
We're back on the Ross Revenge this January for another Caroline North. Join us this weekend for some great music from the 60s, 70s, 80s and into the 90s. We have some money to give away to spend in the Caroline web shop and play you the greatest music of your life. Join us this weekend, live from the Ross Revenge for Caroline North, here with Manx Radio.
Radio Caroline North, back on 648 and 1368 AM.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Manx Wildlife Trust today. Lots to get in between now and 1 o'clock. And by the way, if you want to find out more about Manx Wildlife Trust, the website address is mwt.im. Nice and simple, mwt.im. 50 plus years they've been in existence. And Eddie's first with us. Eddie's with us now. Hi, Eddie.
Hiya, you all right?
Good, thanks, yeah.
Good. Yeah, the Wildlife Trust, it's been going for, 50 years now, is it?
51 now, yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a couple of months back I got an invite to go to the new bird sanctuary at the Point of Ayr. Were your panel anything to do with...
Are you anything to do with that, Leigh?
No, that's a site that's owned by Manx BirdLife, another important nature conservation charity on the Isle of Man. It's a wonderful site, and they're going to create a fantastic reserve up there. It's lovely.
Okay, Eddie?
Totally agree with that. It's fantastic. Were you also anything to do with the biosphere?
We are Biosphere partners, and I personally sit on the Biosphere steering group. But we didn't create the Biosphere, no. But we're proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to Julian that was on before, and he gave a multitude of reasons, for not putting up wind turbines. I'd wrote a lot of things down myself, like the birds, the bats, the wildlife, the heathland, the forest, floods. I've also found a lot of information about peat landslides, which are happening in Shetland because of these things. But what really amazed me was the fact that a body of your statute sort of thing, you said that you actually trusted the government, and you must be the only two people on the Isle of Man that trust this government.
Well, I think, we got to crack on, Eddie, but I think what he said was that they would scrutinise what the government said, but they were for renewable energy, Eddie.
I've got one very important thing to point out, if I may.
Okay.
The Eristane site of which you're actually going to put or proposed these turbines, does the panel know that used to be a tip? And what it was when that landfill was finished, it was all earthed over and turned into a little bird sanctuary.
That's one of our nature reserves. So the Eristane Nature Reserve is built exactly that, on a landfill rubbish tip, and I think it's a great example of reclamation and turning what was human rubbish back to being a good space for nature. So that's a small part of the whole area. Eristane is the Manx Wildlife Trust Eristane Nature Reserve.
And I think that only came in about 25 years ago. I think Manx Wildlife Trust. So, and is that? How successful will that be? Because before we got the incinerator, everything was buried. So that as a landfill site has recovered? Has nature recovered it?
If you walked across the site now, you don't see landfill. The biodiversity of the site, you could debate how biodiverse it was compared to pre-landfill, but it's certainly a site that's been put back for nature.
Okay. Eddie?
But I still totally disagree with anybody who's anything to do with wildlife actually backing turbines when we know all the facts about them and what it's going to devastate. The Isle of Man is a beautiful place. It should not be damaged in any way. And if you're anything to do with the wildlife in this island, I'm disgusted that you even think about backing it.
Okay. All right. We appreciate that. I think Leigh covered that earlier on. Manx Wildlife is a lovely place to be a volunteer, says Mari. Last year I met loads of people from all over the world and they were delighted with the air site. They made it a part of the travel to the Isle of Man as if they'd heard so much about it. Well done, Manx Wildlife, says Mari. So just tell me again, Lucy, how do people if somebody wants to be a volunteer, does it cost anything? Do you have to be a member? What happens?
No, we always want to encourage membership. It's a really important way to add your voice to nature, but anybody can volunteer, and we wouldn't have membership as a barrier if they couldn't get to that. So you get in touch with me. So you could come through the website, you could give us a call, tell us a little bit about what your skills are, what you want to do, when you want to do it, and we would match you with one of the many roles that we've got.
What's your telephone number?
Oh, what is our
84432?
Thank you.
84432. Speak to Lucy. How fit and able do you have to be? Do you have to have your own wellies and mac and everything? Are you going to get wet or cold?
Depending on what you do, we can't promise that the great Manx weather will always be kind, but we will make sure everybody knows exactly what they need to be kitted out in, and we'll keep people safe and happy and comfortable while they're volunteering with us, and we can match roles to people's abilities and to what they want to do.
Okay, Leigh Morris, where do you sit with the agricultural industry on the Isle of Man? What's Manx Wildlife Trust's relationship with farmers?
Well, we are the delivery agents for the new agri-environment scheme, which we're very excited about. So if you don't know, if you're listening to this, Manx Agriculture 75% of the area of the Isle of Man is registered farmland. So working with the farmers for us is a massively important thing. You know, the first 50 years we had nature reserves, some wonderful precious places for the island, but that's less than 1% of the island. So now working with farmers, we've got hopefully a positive working relationship across 75%. So we have a great relationship. We've got a memorandum of understanding with the Manx National Farmers Union. My own background was horticultural crop growing, so I hopefully that gives me an empathy with talking with farmers and producers, and we all eat food. So everything that we eat's been farmed. The island's heritage is in farming, and we found through David Bellamy, our Agri-Environment Officer, who's now our Head of Conservation and Land, delighted to say, he promoted David into that role. But he's still leading on agri-environment, and if David was here now, he'd be talking about the gains that we've made as an island through agri-environment, through getting farmers to be recognised and rewarded for the good work that they're already doing for nature, and then bringing in initiatives to hopefully incentivise and move different things to benefit. So working with farmers is massively important. We have a great working relationship with the MNFU and through the DEFRA Ag team. And we're actually really, really excited about what the future might be.
OK, a message in now from Hilary, who says, can you ask Manx Wildlife Trust, what's the state of the peat on the Isle of Man? And she says that people used to, apparently at one time, were given a right to dig peat up. Presumably that's now gone.
Yeah, you can't harvest peat now in the Isle of Man. You can still burn peat. There's one small Scottish company that's importing a byproduct of the whisky industry into the Isle of Man. You can still burn peat. We'd rather didn't. Again, I have to confess, I'm almost like poacher turned gamekeeper. I was a nursery grower for many years, and I've used probably thousands of cubic metres of peat. But I didn't know then what I know now. And I think as a horticulturist, there are different ways to grow. You don't need peat. You can do it in a different way. So we want to leave it there.
Is our peat on the mountains, will that just continue to aggregate? It will continue to grow and to get thicker?
Interestingly, I think across the uplands, there's a difference. Some areas it's aggregating and coming back. In other areas, we need to do some restoration. In other areas, we need to consider doing some management. And that's where, coming back to the last point about farmers, all the upland is farmed. There are some farmers up there who are extremely positive in wanting to help do that as a sustainable way, and that's something that we're keen to see. How do we work with the flock masters? How do we ensure that the Manx peat and the Manx farming go hand in hand?
Because sometimes you'll be driving across the mountain and we'll see what look like black lines in the heathland, if you like, and that's peat slipping. That's
peat slipping, and a lot of that is where. That's probably reduced to as a result of previous harvesting where the peat slipped, and actually where you get a bare slope of peat, you then start to lose carbon to the atmosphere, so that's again negatively impacting on our carbon footprint. So there is the concept of restoring that, and we did a little trial last year where we introduced sphagnum, and actually Sarah, who led on the peat work for us, has now got the full-time job in DEFRA as the Uplands Peat Officer, which is sad for us, but I tell you it's fantastic for the island, because I think with Sarah leading on the peat work now in a full-time role for DEFRA, for us, that's a great step. That's our government saying that they value the peat and that they're actually going to mobilise and put someone on it full-time. And we're hoping to work, we will be working closely with DEFRA and Sarah on that, alongside Agri-Environment, to actually do some of that restoration work.
OK, here's a note in from Edina, just saying, so once and for all, are you saying we shouldn't have red squirrels on the Isle of Man?
We shouldn't have red squirrels on the Isle of Man because they are not from the Isle of Man, and we need to worry about the Isle of Man species first.
Yeah, okay. I think there's many conservation priorities, aren't there, of conserving what we have.
OK. Live with Manx Wildlife Trust in a moment.
When you save a little money, it means a lot these days.
If you're looking for bathrooms and tiles, you'll always find something new in store at Pacesetter. For surprisingly affordable prices and excellent choice, search online for Pacesetter Douglas. Or better still, visit the Pacesetter Bathroom and Tile Showroom on Harris Terrace and see the new styles in store.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
Are you concerned about your eye health? Holmes & Davidson Opticians in Douglas are proud to offer the Eidon ultra-wide field retinal imaging and Heidelberg 4D OCT systems, state-of-the-art machines that allow early detection and management of eye diseases. Don't wait. Book your appointment today and ensure the health of your eyes with the best technology available. Call 676 230 or visit holmesanddavidsonopticians.co.uk now.
At the first store, the bowls were too small. No good for my porridge, Goldilocks thought. At the second store, the chairs were too hard and uncomfortable. But at the third store, the beds were so comfy. That's because she was in Millie Chaps of Ramsey, where everything is just perfect. Right now, find bargains across every department at the Millie Chaps winter sale, including carpets, flooring, sofas and dining. Plus amazing stressless bedroom furniture and accessories. Don't miss the Millie Chaps winter sale. Good choice, Goldilocks.
Have you been invited to take part in the Household Income and Expenditure Survey? It's one of the most important surveys for our island because the information you provide is vital data for our island's financial planning. It helps us calculate our VAT revenue from the UK. Plus, it gives us a better understanding of the financial strains on residents, so we can support those who are struggling. If you've been invited, please take part. Visit gov.im/HIES for more information.
If you bought your loon pants and cheesecloth shirts from Paraphernalia, if your vinyl records came from Mark Kelly's or the Music Box, if your weekends were danced away at the MGM, the Port Disco or the Hawaiian Bar, then join me to relive those halcyon days with 3 hours of music from the decade that had it all. Sensational 70s on Manx Radio from 1 till 4 on Sunday afternoons with me, Mike Buttle. It's on DAB, online, on smart devices, and absolutely live on air on Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Manx Wildlife Trust, Lucy Chapman is Team Wilder Coordinator. What's the Nature Recovery Network?
So the Nature Recovery Network is looking at how much land we've got in the Isle of Man that is managed for wildlife, that is beneficial for wildlife, and how connected that all is. So part of what we've been doing with UNESCO Biosphere and government is to create a layer on a map that looks at how much of the Isle of Man is friendly towards wildlife, and looking at an often undervalued part of that, which is our own land, our gardens, our office buildings and the land surrounding them. So we're encouraging people, you can go onto our website, you'll find that we've got a little survey called How Wild Is Your Land? And you fill out some questions that cover food, shelter, water, and you can see how well your land is managed for wildlife at the moment, and then you'll get tips on how you could increase the sort of wildlife encouragement factors in your own land. I know that you've done a lot of work here at Manx Radio on the land around you, so I'm going to be sweet talking somebody here to fill out that survey for us.
Oh, we were wilding. Everybody said you can't be bothered to cut your grass. We were wilding, weren't we?
What?
But it was very big for butterflies, wasn't it?
Yeah, big for butterflies, and there'll be other maybe less obvious creatures that are really appreciating that.
Just that the rabbits couldn't find their way through the grass. That was the problem. Yeah. We have lots of rabbits on Douglas Head. You're still doing that butterfly count.
Yeah, the butterfly count has been going for many, many years, hasn't it? I don't know how many years, but a butterfly transect in the same place at the same time of year to see how the populations.
And you count hedgehogs, is that right as well?
We've got a hedgehog project happening, so we've got hedgehog tunnels that we can lend to people if they think that they have a hedgehog in their garden. That comes with lots of information about how you can help and encourage them, how you can create spaces so that they can get through your fences and that sort of thing. Yeah, or it's all about people doing what they can in their own lives to encourage wildlife will make a big difference.
Okay, 84432 if you want to volunteer for Manx Wildlife Trust. So in terms of what you can do in your gardens and at home, Leigh, what would be your advice to people?
It's amazing. I've got a good mate that basically says you get a spade and you dig in and you do your bit. And I think we want people to really appreciate that if you do your bit, it really genuinely matters. And also, nature matters to people. I think a big change in the whole of the wildlife trusts is about nature, the benefit of nature to people. And there's a lot of people in the Isle of Man who would love going out into nature, be that fell running, walking, the blue tits going swimming. They're experiencing and really getting a mental and a well-being benefit back from nature, and that's really important to us. And so actually we just want people to be a little bit selfish maybe and create that bit of green space and put bird feeders up so you can watch the birds, and put bug hotels in, and put wildflower meadows, and enjoy them yourself, and get out into nature and get that sense of well-being back. And if everyone did their little bit, we have a wonderful island. One of our biggest challenges is that we have such a wonderful island for nature already that some people might say, well, why do you need a wildlife trust? The Isle of Man's wonderful. And we want people to know that actually it can be better, and also we want to keep it wonderful for the next generation, so we shouldn't be complacent.
So what would you say? I mean, what's the purpose? If somebody on the street would say, what is the purpose of Manx Wildlife Trust? Heard about it, 51 years in existence. What do you seek to do on a daily basis? We
take nature's voice. We're nature's voice. I think the RSPB would probably say they own that strapline, but I think that's the conservation movement. We take nature's side. We are out there to, we're looking at bringing nature back, conserving nature, looking at ways that we can get nature-based solutions to benefit nature and people, but also how do we get people to feel better from the environment. So we take nature's side.
I got a message in, and this is from Sean, who just said, can you tell everybody that the Manx Ornithological Society have a meeting tonight at the Methodist Hall at Strang Road in Union Mills? It's a presentation about the prospect of offshore wind farms, the challenges, the technology, and the impact on bird life as well. And here's the message in from Paul. Could you ask Leigh how the hen harrier population is doing? You mentioned the wallabies and the hen harriers. There used to be quite a lot 20 odd years ago, but not seen one for years, says Paul.
Well, I've just had the sharp intel from David back at base. Thank you, David. So the highest count we've got is in the early noughties, where I'm told, and Manx BirdLife lead on this. Manx BirdLife have led the hen harrier census on the island, and some of our team contribute. Lara and others will contribute to the hen harrier census. But there was one done in 2022. The figure I've got in front of me is about 38 to 40 pairs. 2000 early noughties, there was about 54 pairs, which I believe is the peak on record. So the numbers are still good, not quite as good as they were 20 years ago, but there's still circa 40 pairs.
The bird population on the Isle of Man, I'm guessing, is world renowned, and it's known, and certainly the calf is extremely important as a stopping off point. And again, just a rough question, if you like. Is the world or is the environment for birds on the Isle of Man getting better or worse?
It's certainly better on the calf now because we've pretty much eradicated longtails. I think also if you look at agri-environment, it gives me a chance to mention the Manx Farmland Birds Group, which has come from, it's not part of our government contract, this has been supported by individuals, it's a partnership. It's not a Manx Wildlife Trust owned thing. It's an island group. So the Ornithological Society, Manx BirdLife, farmers. We've got a group of people working towards conserving farmland birds, and be that choughs, curlews, hopefully corncrakes one day. Certainly tree sparrows is top of the list now. And
you mentioned tree sparrows. What sort of threat is there to tree sparrows?
Well, they're food. So a key way that we're trying to bring them back is putting up feeding stations, so they've got food through the winter. We put millet feeding stations in. So that is a key one. And they are a farmland bird. They need places to nest. They need food supply through the winter. So they're the things that we're trying to tackle.
Okay. Many points I want to get through, and one is just very briefly, if you could, the position of Manx bees.
Oh,
because in that they're very important. We don't have the varroa mite on the Isle of Man, and you were talking about invasive species and things that are going to cause us problems. We export bees, I'm told. Our bee population is very, so that's just part of the ecostructure, part of the ecosystem of the Isle of Man. Fragile, but very well renowned at the moment. Is that something you've got knowledge of?
Very little. I actually did a course. I did last year's winter course with the Beekeeping Society, which I found personally fascinating. The island, if you want to be a beekeeper on the island, I know you've got to be registered with DEFRA. DEFRA have got controls in place. Bees as such is not something Manx Wildlife Trust do. I think we host hives for at least one beekeeper in one of our nature reserves tucked away that's not open to the public. The one point I would say is that there are native bees and there are hive bees. Now, I don't My understanding is that there's no conflict in the Isle of Man with that, but we would need to be careful in some places that we wouldn't overpopulate with non-native bees. But I don't believe that's an issue here.
Okay. All right, thanks for being with us today. We're out of time. Chief Exec of Manx Wildlife Trust, Leigh Morris, and the Team Wilder Coordinator, Lucy Chapman, in today. So many questions and so many calls that we got backed up. So, Leigh, I'm guessing I'm going to ask you to pop back later on this year. Could you manage to do that?
I think we'd love to. I might, David, I'm going to bring David with me.
All right, thanks for being with us today. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you today. That's Manx Wildlife Trust. Now, if you want to get involved, 84432, or go to their website at mwt.im. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today. Back tomorrow with an open line on Manx Radio.